October's very own. OVO, the owl. Drake's brand is everywhere. On chains, on stages, on buildings in Toronto. Millions of fans wear the logo without thinking twice. But the graphic designer who created the original OVO owl in 2011 knows something that keeps him up at night. The owl wasn't his idea. Not really. It came to him in a dream. 3 nights in a row. The same image, the same proportions, the same knowing stay. And when he showed it to Drake, Drake's reaction was strange. Not excited, not surprised, just a quiet nod and the words, "That's it. That's the one who's been with me." The designer didn't understand then, but over the years, watching Drake's meteoric rise, the pattern of the owl appearing in increasingly ritualistic contexts, and the changes in Drake himself, has come to believe something impossible. The OVO owl isn't a logo. It's a sigil, a mark of patronage, and Drake didn't choose the owl. The owl chose Drake. The designer met Drake in early 2011. Drake was ascending rapidly, had just released Thank Me Later, was becoming a household name. But he wanted something more than just music success. He wanted an empire, a brand, a legacy. The designer was brought in to create visual identity, and he started with research. Asked Drake about influences, inspirations, symbols that resonated, and Drake kept coming back to one thing. Owls. He said they represented wisdom, vision, seeing in the dark. The designer thought it was typical artist symbolism, poetic, safe. But then Drake said something that stuck. "I don't just like owls. I feel like they've been following me, watching me, since I was a kid." The designer started sketching traditional owl designs, cute, face, abstract, but nothing felt right. Then came the dreams. Night after night, he'd see an owl, not a real owl, a geometric representation, clean lines, symmetrical, almost ancient, like something from Egyptian hieroglyphics or Masonic symbolism. And in the dream, the owl would stay at him, and he'd hear a voice, not words, just a feeling, a command. "Draw me exactly as you see me." The designer is not superstitious, doesn't believe in messages from beyond, but the dream was so vivid, so insistent, that he drew it exactly as he saw it. When he showed Drake the design, Drake's face went pale. He stayed at the image for a full minute without speaking. Then he asked, "Where did you see this?" The designer explained about the dreams, expected Drake to laugh, to call it coincidence, but Drake just nodded slowly. "I've seen it too," he said, "in my dreams. When I meditate, it's always there, watching. I thought I was the only one." The designer felt a chill run down his spine. 2 people, same image, same owl. That wasn't coincidence. That was something else. Drake launched OVO Sound in 2012. The owl became the official logo. And from that moment, Drake's career went supernova. More hits, more money, more influence. The designer watched from a distance, and he noticed patterns. Every major Drake album release was preceded by owl imagery. Not just the logo on promotional materials, but owls appearing in music videos, in stage designs, in Drake's personal jewelry, massive owl pendants, owl rings, and the positioning was always specific, always visible, like Drake was displaying allegiance, showing the mark. The designer also noticed the timing. Drake was born on October 24th, October, the 10th month. In numerology, 10 reduces to 1, new beginnings, leadership. But October is also significant in occult traditions. It's the month of Samhain, of thinning veils, of communication between worlds. And October's very own wasn't just a birthday reference. It was a declaration. October belongs to something, and that something owns Drake. The designer started researching owl symbolism in esoteric traditions, and what he found disturbed him. In ancient mystery schools, the owl represents Minerva, goddess of wisdom, but also of war, strategy, calculated violence. The owl sees what others can't, operates in darkness, strikes without warning. In Bohemian Grove, the elite gathering in California, they worship a giant owl statue called Moloch. Ceremonies are performed, rituals conducted, and the owl presides. In Freemasonry, the owl appears in high-degree symbolism, representing hidden knowledge, secret wisdom, and the progression through degrees. The designer wasn't saying Drake was part of these groups, but the symbolism was identical. Too identical to be accidental. The designer also looked at Drake's collaborators, the OVO crew, all of them marked, literally, owl tattoos, owl chains, owl imagery saturating their brands, like they've been initiated, brought into something. And those who left OVO, their careers faltered, struggled, like they'd lost protection, lost patronage. The Wiccan left OVO early in his career, and while he found success, his split with Drake was messy, contentious, like leaving wasn't just a business decision. It was a betrayal, and there were consequences. The designer started tracking OVO's business moves, and the pattern was uncanny. Every venture succeeded. OVO Clothing, OVO Fest, OVO Sound Radio, collaborations with Jordan Brand, with Nike, with Apple. Everything Drake touched turned to gold, and the designer thought about the stories, about people who make deals, who trade something for success, and he wondered what Drake traded, what the owl demanded in return for this level of consistent, supernatural success. In 2015, Drake released Back to Back, a diss track that destroyed Meek Mill's career, and the designer listened closely. There's a line where Drake talks about knowing things, seeing things, having information others don't, and the designer thought about owls, their vision, their ability to hunt in complete darkness, and he wondered if the lyrics were literal. If Drake had access to information through unconventional means, through the owl, through whatever entity the owl represented. The designer also noticed Drake's public persona evolution. In the beginning, Drake was vulnerable, emotional, relatable, but over the years, he became colder, more calculated, more strategic. His music still had feelings, but they felt performed, curated, like Drake was wearing emotions instead of feeling them. The designer saw interviews where Drake's eyes looked different, distant, like he was observing himself from outside. And he remembered something an old mentor once told him. When you make a pact with power, you give up pieces of yourself, little by little, until what's left is just the role, just the performance. Then came Certified Lover Boy in 2021. The album cover was controversial. Pregnant women emoji. Lots of them. Critics called it misogynistic. Weird. But the designer saw something else. 12 pregnant women. 12. The number of completion, of cycles, of the zodiac. And pregnancy is creation. Life. Legacy. The designer wondered if the cover was symbolic. Drake's way of saying he'd created something. Not just music. Something bigger. An empire. A lineage. And the owl was there, hidden in the promotional materials. Watching. Approving. The designer started noticing the owl appearing in unexpected places in Drake's work. Album covers often had hidden owls. In shadows. In background details. Sometimes so subtle you'd miss them unless you were looking. The designer compiled screenshots, showed them to other designers, and they all agreed. These weren't accidents. These were deliberate placements, almost like marking territory, like the owl claiming each project. The OVO headquarters in Toronto is another piece of evidence. The building is designed with specific architecture, angles that create owl-like shadows at certain times of day. The interior has owl imagery everywhere, not just branding, but ceremonial. The designer visited once, and the energy felt wrong. Too quiet, too controlled, like a temple more than an office. And there was a room, locked, that he wasn't allowed to see. When he asked about it, the guide got uncomfortable, changed the subject. The designer wondered what was in that room. What happens there? What rituals or meetings take place behind that locked door? The designer also researched October 24th specifically, Drake's birthday, and he found something chilling. October 24th is the feast day of Archangel Raphael in some traditions, but it's also connected to Scorpio season, the sign of death, rebirth, transformation, and occult power. And in certain numerological systems, October 24th reduces to a master number, 11, the number of illumination, of revelation, of gateway. The designer doesn't believe in astrology, but the synchronicities were too perfect, too aligned, like Drake's birth itself was destined, planned, chosen. By 2022, the designer couldn't ignore the pattern anymore. He started asking questions, reached out to other people who'd worked with Drake, and some talked, quietly, off the record. A music video director said Drake insisted on specific owl placements in every video, would approve shots based on whether the owl imagery was visible. A choreographer said Drake had private moments before shows, alone, where he'd stay at an owl pendant, almost like praying. A studio engineer said there were sessions where Drake would stop mid-verse, say the owl doesn't like that line, and change it, like he was consulting something. Someone, some entity that communicated through the symbol. The designer also learned about the OVO tattoos. Members of Drake's inner circle have matching owl tattoos, and they are not just aesthetic. They are placed in specific locations, over the heart, on the chest, like marking, like branding. And once you get the tattoo, you in. For life. The designer spoke with someone who'd been offered the opportunity to join OVO, to get the mark, and they refused. Said something about it felt wrong, like signing a contract they couldn't read. And after refusing, they were shut out, blacklisted, their career stalled. Like rejecting the owl had consequences, the designer decided to test something. He created an alternate OVO logo. Same style, but different bird. An eagle. Sent it to Drake's team as a potential rebrand. The response was immediate and harsh. Legal threats, cease and desist, accusations of intellectual property theft. The designer wasn't trying to steal anything. He was testing, and the reaction confirmed his suspicion. The owl wasn't negotiable, wasn't replaceable. It was sacred, protected, essential. In 2023, Drake released For All the Dogs, another massive album, more success, and the owl was there, on the cover, in the visuals, in the rollout. The designer listened to the album, and he heard something in Drake's voice. Weariness, like someone who'd been running for too long, who'd achieved everything but couldn't stop, because stopping meant losing protection, losing the owl, losing everything. And the designer wondered if Drake was trapped, if the success came with chains, if the owl's patronage was also a prison. The designer also noticed Drake's recent behavior. More erratic, more defensive, more isolated, beefs with multiple artists, legal battles, personal drama, like the cost was catching up, like the owl demanded more sacrifice, more performance, more proof of loyalty, and Drake was struggling to keep up. The designer thought about the old stories, about people who make deals with power. How at first, it's exhilarating, everything you want, everything you dreamed. But over time, the price increases, the demands grow, and you realize you're not in control. You never were. The designer tried to reach out to Drake directly, wanted to talk, to ask questions, to understand. But Drake's team blocked him, said Drake didn't want contact, didn't want to discuss the owl, wanted to leave the past in the past. But the designer knows the owl isn't the past. It's the present, the future. It's everything Drake is, everything he'll ever be. Because once you marked, once you claimed, once the owl chooses you, there's no going back. The designer is speaking now because he needs to warn people. When you wear OVO, when you buy the merchandise, when you display the owl, you're not just supporting an artist, you're participating in something. A symbol has power, and the more people who wear it, who see it, who recognize it, the stronger it becomes. The designer doesn't know exactly what the owl is, a folk form, an egregore, an actual entity, but he knows it's real, and it's growing, fed by millions of fans, empowered by Drake's success, spreading through culture like a virus or a blessing, depending on your perspective. The designer's final warning is about intention. In occult practice, symbols only work if you understand them, if you consent. Wearing an owl unknowingly doesn't bind you, but once you know, once you understand what it might represent, your relationship to it changes. You choosing, accepting, aligning. And the designer wants people to choose consciously, to ask themselves why Drake chose this symbol, why it's everywhere, why it never changes, and what it means that the biggest rapper in the world has built his empire on an ancient symbol of hidden knowledge, night vision, and predatory wisdom. The designer also started examining Drake's collaborations through this lens, and he noticed something. Artists who work closely with Drake often experience career boosts. But there's a pattern. They start incorporating owl imagery, subtle at first. An owl pendant in a music video, owl references in lyrics, and their success accelerates. But if they distance themselves from Drake, if they publicly criticize OVO, their momentum stops. Sometimes dramatically. The designer compiled a list. Over 15 artists who followed this exact pattern. Success with Drake. Owl symbolism appearing in their work. Then distance. Then decline. The statistical probability of this being coincidence is almost zero. The designer spoke with a cultural anthropologist who specializes in modern mythology and brand symbolism. Showed her everything. The timeline, the patterns, the imagery, and she said something that made his blood run cold. You've documented the creation of a modern deity. The owl isn't just Drake's logo. It's becoming an independent entity, fed by collective belief, recognized by millions, associated with success, wealth, power. People are unconsciously worshiping it, and entities that are worshipped grow stronger. They develop agency. They make demands. What started as a symbol has become something else, something autonomous. The designer asked if this was possible, if a logo could become alive. The anthropologist explained egregores, thought forms created through collective focus. She cited historical examples, corporate logos that became more than marketing, national symbols that developed spiritual power. And she said the OVO owl had all the markers, consistent imagery, emotional investment from millions, association with a charismatic figure, and most importantly, results. People who align with OVO succeed. That creates belief, and belief creates power. The designer also investigated the OVO Fests, the annual Toronto Music Festival Drake hosts, and he found something disturbing. The stage design is always the same. A massive owl, illuminated, presiding over the crowd, and the festival happens in August. But it's called OVO Fest, October's very own. Why name an August festival after October unless October itself is significant? The designer researched the specific dates OVO Fest occurs, and they align with specific lunar phases, often new moons, times traditionally associated with new beginnings, manifestation, and in some traditions, with darker workings, bindings, summonings. The designer attended OVO Fest in 2019, stood in the crowd, and the energy was different from other festivals, more intense, more unified. When Drake appeared, the crowd's reaction wasn't just excitement, it was devotion, religious fervor, and when the massive owl lit up behind Drake, the crowd roared. But the designer heard something underneath the roar, a vibration, a frequency, like the crowd wasn't just cheering, they were responding to something inaudible, something the owl was broadcasting. The designer also examined Drake's personal relationships, and he noticed Drake rarely has long-term partnerships, romantic or platonic. People come close, then drift away, or are pushed away, and the designer wondered if this was intentional, if isolation was part of the price. The owl demands singular devotion, no competing loyalties, no distractions, just Drake and the Empire, alone at the top, surrounded by employees and collaborators, but no true equals. No one who remembers who he was before the owl. There's also the matter of Drake's son, Adonis. When Drake finally revealed him publicly, the designer noticed something. No owl imagery in the photos, no OVO branding. Like Drake was deliberately keeping his son separate from the symbol, and the designer wondered if this was protective. If Drake knew something about the owl's influence and wanted to shield his child from it. If fatherhood had made him question the deal, question the cost. The designer found an old interview from 2010, before the owl, before OVO, where Drake talked about his fears, about success changing him, about losing himself, about becoming someone he didn't recognize. And watching Drake now, seeing who he's become, the designer thinks those fears came true. The owl gave him everything he wanted, but it took who he was, replaced it with the brand, the empire, the image, and what's left is a performance. A very successful, very wealthy performance, but a performance nonetheless. The designer also researched what happens to symbols when they are abandoned, when brands die, when logos fade, and he found that some don't fade. Some persist, haunting, appearing in unexpected places. Graffiti, dreams, urban legends, like they are searching for new hosts, new people to claim. And he wondered what would happen if Drake ever tried to stop, to retire, to abandon the owl. Would it let him? Or would it find someone else, transfer its patronage, continue building the empire through a new vessel? In 2024, the designer noticed something new. The owl is appearing in places Drake doesn't control. Street art in cities around the world. Tattoos on people who've never met Drake. Memes. Cultural references. The symbol has escaped containment. It's in the wild now. Self-replicating. And the designer realized this was always the goal. Drake was never the end point. He was the launch pad. The owl used him to spread, to embed itself in global consciousness. And now it doesn't need Drake anymore. It has millions of people carrying it, wearing it, recognizing it, feeding it with their attention. The designer tried one last time to talk to Drake, sent a letter through multiple channels, explained everything, asked for a conversation, just to understand, to hear Drake's perspective, and he got a response, not from Drake, from lawyers, threatening litigation if he continued spreading false narratives about OVO branding. The message was clear. Don't ask questions. Don't look deeper. Accept the surface story. The owl is just a logo. OVO is just a brand. And Drake is just a rapper who got lucky. But the designer can't accept that, because he was there. He saw the beginning. He received the dreams. He watched the pattern unfold. And he knows what he knows. The owl chose Drake, gave him power beyond talent, beyond hard work, beyond luck. And in return, it claimed him, marked him, made him its vessel. And now Drake belongs to the owl. October belongs to the owl. And increasingly, through culture and commerce and collective recognition, we all belong to the owl, whether we know it or not. The designer's final thought is this: symbols matter. They are not just decoration. They are technology. Ancient technology for focusing will, for manifesting intention, for creating change. And when a symbol becomes as ubiquitous as the OVO owl, when it's recognized globally, when it's associated with success and power and wealth, it becomes dangerous. Because people want those things, and they'll align with whatever promises to deliver them, even if they don't understand what they are aligning with, even if the cost is hidden, even if the contract is written in dreams and synchronicities and patterns too perfect to be coincidence. The designer doesn't wear OVO anymore, doesn't display the owl, doesn't even keep the original sketches. He burned them because he doesn't want to be connected to it, doesn't want to be part of what it's becoming, what it's already become. And he's speaking now as a warning to designers, to artists, to anyone who creates symbols. Be careful what you bring through. Be careful what you give form to. Because once it's out there, once it's in the world, you can't take it back. It has a life of its own. And sometimes that life is hungry. Whether you believe in occult symbolism or not, whether you think the owl is just branding or something more, the facts remain. Drake's success is unprecedented, his consistency unmatched, his influence undeniable, and the owl has been there through all of it, watching, presiding, claiming, and the designer who drew it, who brought it into the physical world from his dreams, lives with the knowledge that he didn't create a logo. He created a doorway, and something came through,